Reddit, what bizarre celebrity encounters have you had? I sat next to Natalie Portman at a college graduation. She was the most beautiful human I've ever seen. The ceremony was really long and outside. She brought a snack with her. Some grapes in a cup. She ate them with a spoon. Not even Natalie Portman can make awkwardly chasing grapes around a cup trying to get them to stay on her tiny plastic spoon and not fall off on the way to her mouth look cool. TLDR, Natalie Portman uses a spoon to eat grapes. That's Trump eating KFC with cutlery levels of weird. I had Bill Nye burst into my elevator at the airport. Will this get me to the D gates? No. This is domestics only. Okay, thanks. And out he jumped. To this day I'll never know if Bill Nye the Science Guy made his flight. I would have yelled after him. Inertia is a property of matter. I went to the after party for the Black Eyed Peas. Was not great, so we didn't stay long. On the way out we ran into Fergie and her security and said hello. She came over to chat. And held my hand while we chatted. When she was leaving, she gave me a kiss on the lips. About 2 minutes later her security guy came over and said she wanted us to come up to her room and smoke a blunt. My friend shouted at him that we were not into drugs and pulled me away before I could say anything. And that's how I missed out on a lesbian encounter with Fergie. Well, your friend sounds like a classic party pooper. I was visiting family in Michigan when I met Eminem. I was given a list of food to buy at the grocery store the night before Thanksgiving. So I'm standing there eyeing eggs when I see a guy in a hoodie walk up to the milk. I glance at him. Then go on about my egg buying business. He starts messing around with the milk jugs. So I'll look at him again and recognize him. I kind of fidgeted for a minute before I asked, "Are you who I think you are?" His epic reply, "If I wasn't, then why would I say I am?" We exchanged happy Thanksgiving wishes and parted ways. Also met James Masters at Dragoncan and got to spend about 20 minutes with him one-on-one. But I felt a little bit like I was buying a prostitute. Tickets to this exclusive event were like $200 each. That's probably the best response from Eminem. If I were you, I don't think I would be able to get the words out of my mouth to even talk to him because I would be so nervous. Alice Cooper was playing a show in my hometown a couple of years back. I was walking into a local establishment for breakfast that morning. And lo and behold, there he was just having a bite to eat with the band. I walked up and said hello and that I am a big fan, yada yada yada, and was looking forward to the show he was putting on that evening. I then realized this guy probably gets the same spiel every place he goes. So I told him to enjoy his meal and that I'd leave him alone. Well, I'll be damned if that son of a bitch didn't invite me to join him and the crew for breakfast. We sat there for another hour or so just bullshitting. Then like a chump, I picked up the bill. I met Betty White in Iraq. She was there with Al Roker and Kid Rock. Kid Rock tried to talk to me, but I told him I was there to see Betty. Betty White. What a woman. Not now, Kid Rock. Betty White is here. In Hollywood doing wannabe rock star stuff. My band found a lady parked on Sunset Boulevard with a flat tire. Since we were all nice boys, we changed her tire. After shaking hands and saying thanks, we were on our way back to our van when she came back over with something in her hands. At first I thought it was money and was mentally preparing for the refusing her cash when she handed me a few 8x10 autographed headshots. It was Meg Ryan. None of us recognized her. I wish I could be like that. Thanks for helping me. Here's a picture of myself. I rang up Bono at an amusement park I worked at. I honestly don't really care for you two and didn't feel particularly starstruck, so I just rang him up with pleasant but generally I don't care attitude like I would with anyone else. At one point he said, "Do you know who I am?" To which I said, "Yup," then gave him his total. That was pretty much it. Shoulder said, "Yeah, you're Bono right," but pronounced it Bono. I've told this one before, but I like it because it seems authentic. My brother was in Austin for something or another and Quentin Tarantino got on the elevator with my brother and his buddy. My brother finally asked, "You're someone famous, aren't you?" Tarantino's response was "Fucking A," and that's all that was said. This sounds exactly like Tarantino. Classic. I played paintball with Will Smith. https://imgur.com/sdrz1gc. JPG. I'm a few 15 years older now. I was on a plane with Hulk Hogan once. On the backs of all of the chairs there were screens where you could watch movies, play trivia games or browse the internet. I played the trivia game, named myself the Hulkster, and ended up pulling on 40-50 people who thought I was him. Most popular Delta Airlines trivia session ever. Did you admire his blonde hair that is silken like that of a Chinese man? Deleted. No way. Both my parents, before they met each other, scorned Bryan Adams. My mom rejected him after he asked her to dance, and my dad stole his cooler the next night after a gig. My dad's band was opening for him. Thought he was being rude, so they stole his cooler thinking it was full of beer. Turned out to be full of veggies and dip XD. Sounds like a rough few days to be Bryan Adams. Met Donald Glover after a show, and all I had for him to sign was some right-wing propaganda someone had handed me on the street. He signed that. Got a kick out of it. Invited us on his bus. Then hooked up with my friend. He ended up inviting my friend and I to go to New York on his tour bus. The girl said no though, because she had a philosopher paper to write, priorities. So he bought her some Plan B like a gentleman. Bizarre situation. But a decent guy through and through. And Jesus Christ, his talent makes me self-conscious. Comedy, music, and a new show. And he still has time for after-show shenanigans. Bravo sir. Says she had a philosopher paper to write, priorities. So he bought her some Plan B like a gentleman. Bizarre situation. But a decent guy through and through. And Jesus Christ, his talent makes me self-conscious. Comedy, music, and a new show. And he still has time for after-show shenanigans. Bravo sir. You telling me Donald Glover or Dog your friend? Edit. Sorry, I misread and thought you meant Danny Glover. From the Lethal Weapon series. Deleted. You and Donald Trump are probably the only people who have ever been nice to Ann Coulter. How does it feel? I was 17. In NYC. Just came back from spending the summer at the beach. Saw Jackie O getting into a green Mercedes. I was very tan and had long bleach blonde hair. Was a lifeguard all summer. I asked for a ride to 81st and Lexington. My grandparents lived there. She looked me up and down. Gave a slight smile and said no. Pretty cool encounter. I almost got into a bar fight with the fat kid from The Sandlot. You mean Ronnie from the X-Files? Jane Fonda gave a speech at my middle school which was weird enough. Then I ended up waiting in line for the gross middle school bathroom with her. Which was even weirder. Then she didn't wash her hands when she finished. I'm still baffled by the fact I was in a middle school bathroom with Jane Fonda and that she did not wash her hands. My uncle, who was once a military policeman, arrested her at a Vietnam protest turned violent. Eric Cornell, Nobel Prize winner for creating the Bose-Einstein condensate, was my physics lab professor at university. Before I had him as a teacher I knew who he was cause I watched a Nova documentary about his work, and one day he cruised into the coffee shop I worked at and I totally flipped my shit. At the time I practically had dreadlocks and his expression said something like, "Of all the people here you're the kid that recognized me." Ant and Dec sat under a table with my crying younger brother explaining that just because England had been kicked out of the World Cup it didn't mean they could never play football again. Met Larry the Cable Guy on a golf course. He was by himself and there were 4 of us, so we let him play through. Sliced his ball into the woods and said, "Well, I'll just take a 6. And drove off. Born and raised in Vegas. Sitting in stopped traffic on the Vegas Strip. Boyfriend and I are smoking a J and look over. We see a convertible with Cali plates and posted up in the back is Robert Downey Jr. Boyfriend gets little girl excited and screams Bobby Soft at him, our silly nickname for him, and he just pulls down his sunglasses and says, "Go see Iron Man." 2 of Trump's kids, when Donald held a rally in that city. My friend made me drive him 100+ miles so he could hook up with this girl he met online, and in the meantime, while he was hooking up, I went to a fairly upscale restaurant in town, and out of the blue I happened to notice a guy who looked like Eric Trump. So I got a table next to him and asked if he was who I thought he was. To which he replied yes, and the girl sitting with him introduced herself as Tiffany. Through our conversation they kept praising their dad and how he was going to change how everything worked. A pretty surreal experience of an even more surreal road trip. This sounds true. Because nobody recognizes Tiffany. My friend was talking with a girl at a club in NYC, and when he went to buy her a drink, He came back and she was now dancing with Danny Tamborelli from Pete and Pete. I saw Hulk Hogan on the beach at Ocean City, Maryland. He was wearing a neon green Speedo. I waved. He waved. I wanted his autograph. But my dad wouldn't let me because he said it wasn't Hulk Hogan. It was. I know it was. To be fair to your dad, it may have been a blonde Uruk-hai from Lord Fotherings. My freshman roommate from college ran face first into a lady's boobs while walking through the busy streets of New York. Neither of them were paying attention, but the lady apologized, handed my roommate a $50 and walked away. Years later, my roommate and I were watching TV and she recognized that woman as Sarah Jessica Parker. Sorry that you put your face in my boobs. Here's $50. Several years ago on Tumblr, Dante Basco aka Zuko did a lot of Tumblr style amas. I would always send him something and it would never get answered. He posted that he was done answering and was going to bed, and I sent him a message essentially like, literally, why the fuck do you never answer my fucking questions? Really aggressively. He wound up answering all my questions privately. I don't know how he's sifting through hundreds of messages to find them all, and apologizing. So, I cyberbullied Zuko into talking to me. Dante Basco seems like such a sweet fucking dude, honestly. Deleted. Sounds like the setup to a joke. I walked into Christopher Lee once. Literally walked into him. It's when he was performing at MCM Expo in London. I was utterly speechless and he was nothing but polite about it. Security wasn't entirely happy about it though. Deleted. I worked at a Dunkin' Donuts and one day this guy who looked oddly familiar came into my store. I didn't think much of it and took his order. Jelly donut and a jelly stick. He paid. I have him his donuts and wished him a happy day and he left. Guy seemed to be in a bit of a rush, but that's pretty common. Immediately my coworker, who was working as the coffee assembler, comes running up and goes, "Was that Steve Carell?" And it turned out that it was indeed Steve Carell. I didn't realize because I didn't watch The Office, so I only knew his face from ads and memes. Jennifer Lawrence was my camp counselor. Oh wow. Was she nice in real life? I once made 4 Star Wars movies with Harrison Ford. Cheers. Peter Mayhew. Deleted. I worked at Circuit City and Jordan Knight came in once looking for an iPod. This was the Christmas season right when they came out with the first one. Needless to say, we were long sold out. I didn't recognize him at first, and when I told him we didn't have any, he asked if there was a special room where we kept them for people like me, and he winked at me as if to say recognize me. It was actually kind of sad for him. He was so irrelevant at that point. But also delusional that there was some special celebrity room where we kept merchandise on the off chance that they came in for one. Minor celebrity? Was a student in a hospital going up in the elevator when Megan Phelps, from Westboro Baptist Church, got in. This was also before she left the church. I was an exchange student and knew about them because of the Louis Theroux documentaries, and it was pretty clear that she wasn't welcome as others in the lift who were chatting away stopped as soon as she entered and gave her the death stare. I can't remember what I said, but made a few light jokes and made her laugh. Everyone else looked very awkward while me and her laughed at my shitty jokes. Is the Westboro Baptist Church related to the Church of Iron? I once called Mike Jones. He picked up. It was pretty rad actually. 800 foe. I served Jeffrey Rush. He was really nice and down to earth. In my store we can't acknowledge that they're famous. So I whispered that he was the greatest undead pirate I knew. He gave me a high five. There was a show on CBC called North of 60. I ran into one of the actors who starred on the show and I called him by his character's name. He was so blown away that I knew who he was. We went our separate ways. The next night I seen him at a bar and he zeroed in on me. He then offered me a drink at his hotel. I was 19 years old and he was well in his 50s. I was like, no thanks. Henry Winkler, Fonzie from Happy Days, had no line at my town's Comic Con a few years ago. So my family and I talked to him for several minutes. While in Monterey, I bumped into Clint Eastwood as we were walking out of a Rite Aid, buying booze, and he was walking into a health food store. I wanna say Whole Foods. Me and a couple buddies were in uniform still. And he stopped and talked to us for a minute. Just pleasantries. He was a super cool guy and very respectful. Surprised the shit out of me he was going into the Whole Foods though. My friend has met Vince Vaughn in random places all over Chicago. Not me but my sister once rented Chasing Amy to Joey Lauren Adams. Doesn't she have a copy of the movie she was the star of? I bumped into Taeyang of Big Bang at a department store in Tokyo, Japan. I was looking at a leather jacket and touching it while another person was trying to touch the same jacket. I looked up and it was him, wearing his surgical mask. We did the sup nod to each other and walked away. He was pretty short. I once introduced former WWE pro wrestler Gangrel to a match and then my dad challenged him to a match for his hot dog. I feel like every World of Darkness fan in my gaming group would want a multi-paragraph recounting of this tale. My mom and I both got hugged by Marilyn Manson. I was with my wife and two sisters at Disneyland when we see Christian Bale and his family by the entrance to the Matterhorn. We're a few feet away from him when my sister decides to have a little fun and says in a low voice but still audible to those in close proximity, "I'm not wearing hockey pads," in her best Batman voice she could muster. Christian Bale and family proceed to turn around and stare at us. He was not amused. Deleted. One time I stopped at a Starbucks in Washington, D.C. and on my way in I saw John McCain walking behind me. My dad was with me at the time and he was ecstatic, while I just stood there open-mouthed. My dad talked to him and line inside and when we left he shook both of our hands. This was about a week after he lost the election to Obama. Deleted. Nick Cage at Disneyland on Christmas Day. I think you just wrote National Treasure 3. I was a teenager. We were visiting my grandparents. We decided to visit the Chicago Wax Museum one day. As we walked to the door, Colonel Sanders, the real Colonel Sanders of Kentucky Fried Chicken fame, got out of a limo, now known as KFC. Grandma asked for his autograph and he handed us pre-printed cards. He was in his late 70s or early 80s then and the cards were easier for him. Unbeknownst to us, the Wax Museum was featuring a life-size display of Colonel Sanders, which was why the real Colonel was there. Somewhere in my family's photos is a glossy of Colonel Sanders looking at Colonel Sanders. KFC is a weird name for a limo. Why does a limo need a name anyway? I was having a drink at this bar in Nashville. This redhead dude comes in and sits next to me and starts cracking jokes at the TV, football. So we start bullshitting, taking shots on touchdowns and whatnot. We finally leave at like 3 a.m. go to Waffle House. And as we're talking in the restaurant, drunk off our assessment, I notice he looks really familiar. I mention this and just spit out, "Oh, I'm Shaun White." Might be stretching the label celebrity, but mine was with Jermaine Clement, Flight of the Conchords, Eagle vs. Shark, What We Do in the Shadows. A few years ago I was in Wellington with some friends, out for dinner, and we see Jermaine at an ATM. It was dark, and we were several meters away, but it was definitely him. None of us even thought of going up to him, but he saw us looking over and fast jogged away. Was very strange. Where you sat in the dark waving and whispering, "See me. See me." Had lunch with Chubby Checker in a train car at a hot air balloon race. I met Robert Vaughn, the Og Man from U.N.C.L.E. randomly in a store once. This was maybe 7 years ago. I was 25. He was shocked someone my age knew who he was. He was really nice and told me he was in town to visit his daughter's horse farm. That's about it. Guy seemed really humble and chill. Someone our age could just as easily know him from his work on the show Hustle. I almost bumped into Tom Felton, Draco Malfoy in Harry Potter, at a convention in the UK. He was there filming a documentary. My adult daughter is a friend of his. He wishes her happy birthday every year even with so much to do and half a world away. He's a lovely young lad. Deleted. You're only supposed to talk about Rampart when around Woody. Was getting my hair cut at a fancy place on 5th Ave before my wedding. Who walks in and says hi to the stylist? But Katie Couric. My hair was still sopping wet. I was draped in a giant black bib. And all I could do was say, "Hi, how are you?" She beamed her famous smile at me and said, "Fine. How are you?" I chuckled and said, "Fine. Thanks." It was pure instinct to greet her as if I knew her. And she was perfectly gracious about it. I was on a tour with some bands. We were in Salem, Oregon and walking around. We saw the Extreme Home Mccullum bus and thought it was pretty cool. That night we did some more walking and came across this bar. Ty Pennington was standing outside of it talking to a fan. He saw that one of us had a guitar and asked us to play a song. He was totally wasted. Slurring and sloppy. He sat down with the guy playing guitar and started doing this weird throat thing. He was basically vocalizing along while pressing his finger firmly on his throat and quickly moving it up and down, making a tremolo. After the song he started talking to us and hitting on some of the girls. They were obviously uncomfortable, so we left. Deleted. I met Jason Bateman at my work a few weeks ago. I work at a grocery store in Missouri. He was getting Starbucks there even though there's a real Starbucks across the street. Nice guy, had an ugly hat on though. Back in like 2000 to 2001 we used to go down to this dive bar after work because they had $2 pitchers of PBR. Without fail Dave Matthews would be there. Drunk as shit. Talking trash about being the greatest pool player in the world. He would challenge anybody for a pitcher. And lose his ass every single goddamn time. A little late. But I shared an elevator with Tony Hawk and Aruba. When he got on I just laughed and said fuck off. My go-to surprise social tick. I guess. He said he will when the doors open back up. Meet many famous people where I work. But very briefly because my job requires to get them in and out. Or in and going very quickly. Gary Busey poked my side pretty hard and said let me get in there, guess I was in his way. Not sure if Paul Ryan is considered a celebrity. He came into the Papa Murphy's I was working at. And forgot to order olives. He asked, "Can I get some olives too?" I explained that extra toppings were $1. He gave an annoyed look. Went back and paid. I guess he felt entitled to free olives. No one gets olives for free. You should have smiled smugly and banged your gavel. Motion is closed. Deleted. No one will ever believe you. My so and I went to NYC and we were walking beside Forrest Whitaker for a while. We got too shy to say anything though. Classic Canadians. I have a few of these. Rachel Ray and Dr. Phil hosted my senior prom. Rachel Ray catered it and all the tuxes and dresses were free. We had a tornado kill some kids at my high school and they sponsored prom after. In college. I saw Mike Tyson eating ice cream outside of the Cold Stone I worked at. Wearing a top hat and long, dressy winter coat. Then. About a year ago. I walked by Paula Deen frantically eating a burrito on the steps of a Chipotle in Atlanta as I was walking in. She was gone when I left. Deleted. I was at the Angelica movie theater and I was with some friends and said, "Hey, wait for me." Going to the men's room. I'm a big guy. Over 6 feet. Running half speed and almost knock into a petite lady and she goes, "Ah, it was Susan Sarandon." I apologized profusely. I was one of the audience members on those red carpet movie events for MTV and as I was trying to get a picture of Emma Watson, I felt this sharp but arousing pain in my right nipple. Nick Swardson gave me a nipple twister as he walked past me. I was cool with it. My friend insisted he assaulted me. I am a bigger guy. I'm used to having my moves center stage. When I looked over to him, he smiled and walked away. I tweeted him a year later and he favorited my tweet. I have pictures from the event along with the tweet in case anyone doesn't believe. Removed. I saw John Cena driving a Range Rover the other day. He's a good driver. One time my dad met Henry Kissinger at an airport and said, "It's an honor to meet you, sir." Well, old man Kissinger had hearing aids in both ears and gave out a really loud "What? I can't hear you." In the most old man way possible. No one must know I dropped my hearing aid in the toilet. Not I. The man who drafted the Paris Peace Accords. My husband and I were moving away from Lab, where we lived for like 5 years or so. And we had a get-together with all our friends on our last night. It was at some bar that was not popular at all. Like completely empty at 10 p.m. on a Friday. Except for us. And Kiefer Sutherland and some woman. It was a hilariously long experience. Random celebrity encounter. Anyway. All I really remember about him was that there was no one dancing and no dance floor, but he got up from the bar and danced with that woman. Oh, and my husband has a funny one. He was shooting a short film in NYC one time and Alec Baldwin walked by in the background, public park. I like to say he was a guest star in that film that never went anywhere. I met George R. Martin in an underground pub in Edinburgh. He was with 2 or 3 young ladies and refused to talk to us when we politely greeted him. But it was meh. I understand that he wanted some private time. Why else would he be in an empty pub? We got some cool coins for free and we took a family picture, with him in the background lol. He was with 2 or 3 young ladies. Well, he was scoring. Saw one in an AA meeting as part of his treatment. Saw another in an AA meeting and he's a regular with long-term sobriety. And I saw Hollywood starlet in the psych ward when I was visiting as part of AA community outreach. I was sitting in my work truck eating lunch outside of a condo building. Then Rachel Hunter walks up to me and asks if I had a spare cigarette. Me and my 2 buddies were walking down Sunset in Hollywood and we saw Michael Rappaport standing outside a bar having a smoke. We kinda were staring at wondering if it was really him. Then out of nowhere he yells at us. "Yep, it's me. What do you want?" Deleted. Was John Lithgow hitting on you or did he seem legitimate with the sailing thing? I've had a couple. Dave Bautista used to frequent my pizza place. Wasn't really crazy. He was a super nice guy and tipped really well. Just funny because he's huge. I felt like a munchkin and I'm 6 feet. Another. I was in line at LaGuardia to get some coffee. A man comes up to me and asks me, "Is this the line for coffee?" "Yes," I say. Then he yells our curse words which I thought was funny. His rough voice sounded really familiar and he looked pretty familiar. I had a hunch on who it was but my phone wasn't getting any data where I was in the airport. I get back to where my so is and look it up. It was Albert Brooks who played Melon on Finding Nemo and from what I definitely knew his voice from Hank Scorpio from The Simpsons. I was at the Four Seasons bar called the Halcyon Room in New York with Huey Lewis, drunk and singing with his buddies in a good way, and then a few years later, I was eating a breakfast brunch at a hotel in Portland, Oregon and as Huey was boarding the band bus, he told a fan to give me the camera to take their picture. Never talked to him or had any interaction but there are 2 points in both of our lives where we were in the same spot at the same moment in time. Saw Ice Cube in downtown Chicago as I was coming out of Subway. They were shooting Barber Shop 2. I had a meatball marinara. It was a good day. I was part of a live audience in Korea and needed to go to the toilet. While I was in there several of the female K-pop idols came in to brush their teeth etc. I ended up finding out which ones had chicken fillets in their bras. Queen Latifah came into Starbucks and ordered a triple grand dry cappuccino. All of us baristas were afraid of fucking up. LOL. You fucked up the spelling of her name. I was at LAX Airport in Los Angeles at about 4:30 am with the other lucky 10 souls that were there. I am going through security. I put all of my stuff into the machine and walk through the metal detector. While I am foolishly trying to put my shoes on, I hear a commotion going on behind me but I don't think twice about it because I can't get my shoe on and I feel like an idiot. I finally get it on. And then I feel a tap on my shoulder and a guy is handing me my backpack. That guy was Channing Tatum. Wearing a white tank top and a baseball hat. Dude didn't need a bodyguard. Just him and his driver. I barely got the word picture out of my mouth. He took it of course. Then he disappeared. Awesome guy. It was 1962 in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm walking down the street minding my own business. Feeling good. I was coming around the corner and a man hit me in my chest. I fell to the ground. I look up and it was Martin Luther King. I said Dr. King, he said. Oops. I thought you were somebody else. Man. You ain't never met Martin Luther King. My dad met Beyonce while smocking her bodyguard in Moscow. He thought her bodyguard was a famous basketball player and didn't know who Beyonce was. Lifeguarded Surrey Cruise and Katie Holmes for a day. Among other beachgoers. Katie is not ocean savvy. Luckily there were no paparazzo in the area. Edit. Also, my friend accidentally kneed Peter Dinklage in the chest while walking down some stairs in NYC. Ethan Hawke used our disgusting employee bathroom. Complete with bizarre and completely inappropriate hiccups written on the walls. And a dick mirror. Closest thing to a celebrity encounter I had, at a convention I was carrying around an umbrella as a prop in a super crowded dealer's room. As I was leaving to go meet up with some friends I accidentally bumped someone in the head with it. Muttered a quick sorry and sprinted off. Halfway to the meeting spot I realized that the person I hit was Andrew Hussey, creator of the webcomic Homestuck, while he was on his way to do autographs. Oops. After killing everything he created multiple times. I think he has likely reached a point of acceptance with these things. He has surpassed our reality and exists in his own now. I was in traffic with Mark Bulger once. He was driving a late model Porsche. I was driving a 96 Grand Am with a blown head gasket. I passed him. I met Clyde the Glide at Says in Las Vegas. The weird part was he was just walking down one of the hallways swarmed with people and I was the only person who recognized him. Apparently he was doing some promo event for a tech company. Clyde the fucking Glide. My dad told me that years ago he was at an airport, outside, and the guitarist from Eurythmics approached him and asked if he had a lighter and my dad said no. I ran into Tracy Morgan at the supermarket. Did it hurt? Bobby Clark grew up and played junior hockey in my hometown. He was in town for something to do with the team one weekend. My buddies and I were driving around and these vehicles were stopped having a farmers convention so we laid on the horn. Guy leans out to glare at us and it's Bobby Clark. We just kind of sat there going oh shit. Something like that is a beating offense back home. Not really weird I guess but that's the only celebrity encounter I can remember having. Not bizarre. But totally unexpected. I was in a car in Manhattan waiting to leave to celebrate my brother's bachelor party. We were in there just shooting the shit and Kevin Bacon walked by us. Alton Brown found out I forgot my mother's birthday so he made a video for her saying that I didn't. Years ago I tweeted about Jeremy Piven having more hair now than he did back when he did a few episodes of Seinfeld. He actually privately messaged me and said you got a lot of hair dude yet. I told my friend about it and he tweeted a few comments to Piven as well to which he responded. Jeremy Piven is very sensitive about his hair. When I was a teen I was riding my bike on some trail. When I promptly ran over a rock I didn't see and went flipping over my bike's handlebars then rolling into the dirt. I got dirt in my eyes and sat there trying to get some air. Then this German tourist in a hoodie pulled his bike next to me, helped me to my feet and asked if I was okay. He helped me dust off and went to get my bike, which had tumbled down the trail. Then he slapped a bottle of water on my hand and told me to be careful, and went along his way. Then I paused for a second and recognized his face. It wasn't a German tourist. It was Schwarzenegger. Ariana Grande and her friends cut in right front of me and my husband, then fiancé, at Six Flags to get on a ride. We were next in line and then they all slipped in. Got that special treatment where they skip all the lines. Wasn't especially friendly. But that was a thing that happened. I just shook Bill Clinton's hand this past Friday. At a brewery. I was sound designer and stage manager for a play that Tom Hanks and Jose Rivera came to see. After the play, I got to meet them. They complimented my work. That was a bit surreal. I guess the bizarre part is that it wasn't just another passing celebrity encounter. I actually had the opportunity to hang out and make a couple of really cool new friends. Truly nice guys. Tom invited us out with his friends to a party after. Good times. Not really a celebrity. But I ran into Mike Babcock the hockey coach at a Tim Hortons. We were the only ones inside waiting for coffee and I made small talk about the weather. All he said when he got his coffee was just fantastic and got out before people recognized him. I was in Miami once and saw DJ Khaled in front of a club. As we tried to approach him he gave us the "Oh I'll rip you to shreds if you talk to me" look. Was disappointed since he always preaches about love for fellow man on his Snapchat. He got into the back of a Maybach. Played his own music. And had his driver speed off. Also met J.K. Simmons once. Really nice guy. Edit. Both were separate occasions in different cities. Saw Gordon Ramsay walking at Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. I don't think anyone knew or recognized him, shockingly, but when I went to the elevator, people were muttering, "Was that Gordon Ramsay?" I was on a plane with my dad. When he points to someone a few rows in front of us. I had no idea who it was. But he told me it was Victoria Silvstedt. Never have I seen as many middle-aged men ogle one person. Saw Billy Joel at a restaurant in Long Island. He looked like crap. Met Chad Ochocinco-Johnson in a bathroom in Madrid, Spain 6 years ago. That was neat for 14YOME. Channing Tatum and Steve Carell filmed a movie at my high school. They blocked off a road near my parents' house for the shoot. I walked up and waved to Steve Carell in the car, but he wasn't looking at me. And they did a meet and greet thing at my high school, but I had graduated by that point, so I didn't go. I used a urinal next to Mel Gibson way back in 1985 or so at a Tina Turner concert in Birmingham right after the third Mad Max movie came out. I was at a trade show gawking at some exhibit and complete plowed into Ozzy Osbourne. I apologized. Then realized who I ran into. He looked pretty normal at the time. I met Aaron Carter after a Broadway show, and not to start rumors, but he looked like he just did 3 lines of cocaine and acted like he was hot shit. I photobombed a pic with Jeffree Star and he called me a bitch. I didn't know who he was until like 2 years later. Had dinner one table over from Justin Trudeau last year. He was eating with his wife and a couple other people, and I didn't want to disturb his meal, so didn't go over to ask for a picture or anything. Met my then idol Yosuke Bazooka a few times. Never sober. And that one time, when I ran into him while looking for the venue where he was gonna perform, I was like, "Excuse me, where's the?" "Oh hey," and he was like, "It's you." He seemed seriously out of it. Minor celebrity sports star story. I worked at a sports authority in my hometown during college breaks. I was ringing a woman up when I overheard a customer talking to the cashier next to me. He was asking about tennis equipment that he couldn't find in the store. My co-worker suggested the Crisava Tennis Academy, which is a big tennis school with a store down the road. I turned back to the woman and she looked embarrassed and said something about people talking about her. She bought a lot of stuff, so my cash register asked me to look at the card to confirm the name. She hands me the card. Her name? Christine Avert. I had an awkward encounter with Kaylee Cuoco and Henry Cavill at a grocery store. We both went for the same checkout lane at the same time. And started to jockey to be first. Then we both stopped and went back and forth with "you go first." "No. You go first." I ended up getting that lane and they opened up the next one for the celebrities. Waited for an elevator after lunch in the lobby of my office building, NYC, with some guy. One comes. I get on. Ask the guy if he's getting on. No. I'm waiting for someone. 5 minutes later. I'm sitting in my cubicle when I hear Pugy racing over to pick her, screaming that Rob Lowe was in the lobby. Next day. There's a picture on page 6 of the guy I was waiting with. Caption said it was Rob Lowe. Would have been early 90s. He was doing a play with Tony Randall's theater company. And they were using space in our building to rehearse because the theater wasn't ready yet. I went to a basketball gym this summer to relax with some shooting practice. Like 9:30 p.m. on a Monday, only 4 other people there. Kevin Durant, Melo, Deacons, and a coach came in the back door and politely asked us to shoot on the other side of the court while they ran a secret practice. My friend's mom dated Busta Rhymes and dumped him. Held the door once for a gent in a nice suit. Just being polite. I was going out. He was coming in. As he passed by me he said, "Thank you, sir." "No problem," I say. My usual rejoinder. Then it hits me. Oh. That was Al Gore. Had a very similar experience with Steve Jobs. Now that I think about it. And George Kennedy. Apparently I have a thing for holding doors for famous people without realizing who they are. I ate chicken cordon bleu with Lou Temple and his wife in the dining room of my own house. He was filming Unstoppable, the train movie with Denzel Washington, in my hometown, and I guess my dad was somehow able to get him interested in a nice home-cooked meal. My dad wasn't involved with the shoot at all. I still have no idea how or why any of it happened. Not me. But one of my former co-workers yelled at the Kardashians and their film crew for parking in the shuttle stop while filming their TV show at Big Sky. Several of my friends who were lift operators also were asked to sign releases to be shown on their show. But all of them refused and got blurred out or moved to other lifts. They were also flying a helicopter all over the place above the mountain one day. Which was very annoying. I was at a Lennox Lewis boxing match in Vegas. I'm standing watching my buddy get us beers. He waves all excited. Comes over and tells me that Charlize Theron was standing next to me. I didn't know. I smoked pot with Bo Mitchell from Eastbound and Down, Wayne Powers, one time. He was cool. Said I could roll a fat twist. Not me. But my partner. And obscure because it was a voice actor. Partner was helping friends of ours set up their store at a pop culture convention. Travis Willingham came up to him. Spoke to him for a bit. Said wait right here and came back with a can of Coke for him. This happened the day before I first met my partner. I'm stupidly jealous. I have had passing encounters with celebrities twice in my life. Once was more of a bump. I walked straight into Eugene Maman at Faces in downtown Northampton the day after he had a show at a local college. Then about a year and a half ago I walked by Matt Damon in a bucolic seaside town in North Shore. Oh. And when I was 15. I interrupted a conversation that my friend was having with someone I didn't know, a guy who was much older than us. Turns out it was Matthew Kors, the lead singer from Nada Surf. He pretended to be offended by my interruption after I apologized. By imitating Daffy Duck saying it being a very important conversation. My friend knows a guy who used to blow cocaine up Kate Bush's ass. I ate fried dough with some Buffalo Bills running backs, C.J. Spiller, Fred Jackson, and Johnny White I think, a couple years ago after the training camp. I was 6 and saw Donna Summers in a thrift store in Massachusetts. I was too nervous to say anything. Definitely regret it since she passed away a few years ago. Deleted. I'm gonna sound like a millennial. But I've had Lindsey Jones and Tyler Coe of Rooster Teeth Achievement Hunter like a few of my tweets. I said something about Forza Motorsport 6 and got a couple of likes from them. And just today got a reply from Mike Finnegan from Hot Rod Magazine and Motor Trend's Roadkill. I'm assuming he was typing really fast, had autocorrect turned off. He spelled Twilight as Twilight. Edit. I also talked to Jack Patillo, Katie Ward, Matt Bragg, and Joel Heyman at Rooster Teeth's charity event the day before RTX about being a YouTube and cars and annoying yet adorable pet cats. John Malkovich walking down the sidewalk along Mass Ave in Cambridge, Ma. He was wearing an Illinois University sweatshirt and that confirmed it that it was him after I did the double take. I'm a bit of a fan of his. He was by himself. We made eye contact walking opposite directions and I forced myself to be cool. I just smiled and nodded my head to indicate I knew who he was and kept walking. I like to think he appreciated me not interfering with his personal life. Met Weird Al at Starbucks. When I was a little boy, only about 7 or 8, I got to skip school and spend the day having fun around my small town with my mom. For lunch, we sat down at this 50s diner because it was my favorite restaurant in town. Plus it was almost entirely empty. I ordered mini corn dogs and she ordered a chicken salad. But just when they brought the food over, my mom gets up and walks over to talk to some man in a booth behind ours. I didn't care. And was actually a little upset. It was my birthday. Why does that guy get to talk to my mom? After a minute she asks me to say hello to the man. I did. And I forgot about it. Years later, when I was 16 or so, my mom was telling the story to other people. And I find out that guy was Gary Sinise. Not a traditional celebrity encounter. But I went to high school with Michael Medved's kids. He is a very popular American conservative radio pundit. I've met him twice at school-related events. Although I doubt he remembers me. What was funny was the time I was listening to his show on the drive home. And he mentions his 14-year-old son, who has since done commercial spots on the show. I immediately burst out laughing. Mostly because he was talking about how worried he was about his son's education. When he probably should have been more worried about his son being the worst behaved kid in class. I work SXSW every year. Elijah Woods will wander downtown Austin by himself just for shits and giggles. Seen him every year. Best is watching other people react to walking past him and them doing a double take. Oh yeah. Here is another one. A few years ago I was Karsh Kale's driver while he was performing at a music festival. We smoked his Indian cigarettes he had brought with him from his last gig and listened to his unreleased music while we drove. Really cool experience. I supposedly sat on B. King's lap and got accidentally kidnapped by a famous NFL player I cannot remember the name of. Walter Payton. I sold Alexander Gould, younger son from Weeds, a TV a few years ago when I worked at Target. No one else seemed to notice that it was him. He was a pretty laid-back guy. Was on a train from Seattle to LA and saw someone who looked really familiar. I am a nervous person so I didn't introduce myself. Sorry, random celeb on the train. I hope that script was a fun read. Saw Justin Long at a theater. Friends and I cornered him into the vestibule going into one of the theaters. He was really weirded out. I felt bad. But we needed a picture. We needed it. In Afghanistan. I was a part of an Al Franken skit where he dressed up like Saddam Hussein. He wanted another soldier and I to handcuff and drag him off the stage at a certain part of his act. We did as we were told. But we fully expected him to cooperate with us when we started to take him off the stage. He did not. We ended up actually picking him up and carrying him off stage while he was handcuffed. He actually put up quite a fight. So basically we physically assaulted a Saturday Night Live legend future senator. I used to go to a beach that was nearby a very popular celebrity resort. It also has a very curvy roads with heavy vegetation. Well, one summer day I am driving down the road and if nowhere a guy walks into the street. I slammed in my brakes and realized I almost turned Donald Sutherland into roadkill. I was crossing the street near Faneuil Hall in Boston when I full on ran into Joey Fatone. Like crashed into him. I kinda bounced off. We both mumbled apologies to each other and kept going. I took one more step and was OMG, that was Joey Fatone. So I turned to look while standing in the middle of the road and sure enough it was him. This was 2014. So he wasn't like that famous by that point, but still. I was at a Starbucks outside of Coachella a few years ago. Standing behind Elijah Wood in line. I wanted to say something to him really bad. But he was surrounded by 3 really attractive women and didn't want to break in on something. Instead I just stood a little too close to their party hoping he would notice me and I would get to drop the line, I ain't dropping no E's, so honest. I helped Cuddy from House, Lisa Edelstein, with a home delivery at IKEA where I work. House was one of my favorite shows, with the original people in the first couple seasons, not the new people. I still asked for her name because I didn't want her to know that I already knew it. I also didn't say anything about Cuddy because I'm working. And I didn't want her to think I was weird and get annoyed. So I just shut my mouth and did my work. Watched Brendan McCullum, New Zealand cricketer, perform the haka smoking a cigarette. Shirtless and accompanied by Brett Lee, Australian cricketer, while rather inebriated at a little get-together for Jacques Kallis, South African cricketer birthday. I succeeded as a bartender that night. I met Warwick Davis when he presented a commemorative rock in my village. Was in Melbourne a while back and I'm 90% sure Miranda Kerr got into the same lift as me in a shopping center. My friend was apparently oblivious to this, but I noticed and I kind of had a sharp intake of breath and my eyes widened as I stared sideways at her. And for some reason my eyes darted down to her boobs for a while, I guess because they're famous. I'm still not sure whether she noticed me ogling her, so if you're reading this, Ms. Kerr, I'm terribly sorry. Sean Ma. The actor who played Simon Tam from Firefly elbowed my girlfriend in the head. We were supposed to meet him at a convention for a picture. They miscounted the number of people who paid for meet and greet photos. So when we got there he had already left for the vendor hall. The head of security at the convention hall paged for some guys to go find him. Which I felt obliged to ask, you're sending your men to find him? When he came around, he was visibly flustered and apologetic. I don't think Sean Ma is a different person than Simon Tam. He was trying to throw a scarf on to pose for a picture and a stray elbow knocked my very short girlfriend on the head. He apologized profusely and we took the picture. But to this day I'm happy to know that Simon Tam is real. I also met James Edward Elmos when a friend of mine saw him and pitched the idea of approaching him and asking him how to approach Battlestar Galactica. The guy gave a full-blown 5-minute chat with us. Told us to start with the miniseries and talked about his character. I mentioned Stand and Deliver and he just seemed like he'd never get tired of hearing love for his work. One of the nicest people, total stand-up guy. I stared at Ludacris across a mall Ruby Tuesday off the interstate once. Near I-20 in Florence, South Carolina. I could not divert my eyes. I was ashamed and terrified and overjoyed but did nothing but watch him as he watched me watching him while he ate. I couldn't move or speak. If I did, this story would have been a lot more interesting. My wife and I used to drive to Athens, Gar for the weekend in the early 90s. We went into the 40 Watt Club and R.E.M. were there hanging out. Not playing. No one bothered them, but when the bar closed and the lights came up my wife dragged me over to Michael Stipe and said my husband doesn't believe that you are who you are, and he shook my hand and said I'm 5'8.5". That was it. I've met Gavin Blair, the co-creator of the 3D animated series reboot, a few times. I wrote a paper on him in university, and then ran into him at a convention. He remembered me the next year. We talked a lot. And I have a picture of him holding my Ghostbusters proton pack gun.